The Dominion thought they understood endurance. They had conquered 100 worlds and tamed a dozen species. They had seen armies break under pressure, watched civilizations collapse with the precision of a clock winding down. Every war had a rhythm: the push, the retreat, the surrender. Everything ended when fear outweighed courage. That was the rule, until the Terrans arrived. It began in the Red Sector, a border skirmish that should have lasted 3 hours, maybe 4. A human patrol ship trespassed into Dominion space. Protocol demanded interception. The Dominion sent a task force, 6 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and 1 carrier. Overkill for what was supposed to be a clean capture. They expected the humans to surrender when surrounded. Instead, the humans smiled. The Dominion fleet opened fire. The Terran ship, a small, ugly thing, didn't dodge. It took the first barrage full-on. Shields overloaded, hull cracked. Any rational species would have ejected, signaled distress, begged for terms. But not them. The Terran ship ignited its engines and dove straight into the formation, guns blazing. Its pilot didn't care that their ship was dying. They cared only that the Dominion bled with them. Every cannon that fired on them got a missile in response. Every ship that tried to retreat found itself hunted by debris that moved like it had intent. The Dominion commander, cold and logical, ordered all ships to keep distance, to let the human burn itself out. He didn't understand that humans don't burn out. They burn through. For 7 minutes the battle was chaos. Then silence. The human ship drifted, half melted, a dead husk. Scanners showed no life signs. The Dominion sighed in relief. Then the ship moved again. Its thrusters screamed to life, pulling it upright, stabilizing. The commander stared at the feed, disbelieving. That's impossible, they're all dead. And yet the guns fired again. A Dominion lieutenant screamed through the comms, "Sir, there's no pilot, no crew. The ship's fighting itself." The commander leaned forward. "Not itself," he whispered. "Its will." The Terran ship rammed the Dominion carrier, detonating both in a blinding wave of fire. When the light faded, the void was silent again, save for one fragment of transmission, looping endlessly in broken human English. Still, fighting. The wreckage of the Red Sector hung like a graveyard in orbit, jagged metal glinting against the blood-colored gas clouds. For 3 weeks, the Dominion recovery teams combed through the debris, cataloging fragments, analyzing residue, searching for patterns. Nothing made sense. There was no logical reason for what had happened. A single Terran ship had destroyed an entire squadron. No biological pilot could have survived the radiation output from that blast, yet scans of the cockpit revealed traces of human DNA, and fingerprints welded into the metal itself, as if the pilot had refused to let go, even while vaporizing. Commander Vreth oversaw the investigation personally. A meticulous being of ice-colored scales and perfect composure, he had never known fear. But when he touched the melted flight console, smooth, fused, unyielding, he felt something he couldn't name. A Dominion engineer floated beside him, voice shaking through the comms. "Sir, we ran the recordings again. We think we found something." "Show me." The engineer played a clip, static, fire, chaos. But buried deep in the noise, something else spoke. Not a word, not even a tone, just breathing, slow, steady, human. Vreth frowned. "You're telling me this was recorded after the detonation?" "Yes, sir." 5 minutes after. The commander turned toward the black expanse beyond the viewport. "That's not possible." "Nothing about them is," the engineer whispered. Vreth dismissed the team and ordered the debris sealed in quarantine. That night, while reviewing the ship logs, he paused at the pilot's final entry. It was brief, distorted by radiation. Status: engines at 90%, shields failing. Crew condition irrelevant, then a pause and a faint laugh. "Doesn't matter, we finish what we start." The file ended there. By the next rotation, the Dominion Council convened. 12 species gathered in the Great Chamber, the walls flickering with holographic stars. Each delegate reviewed the footage, the telemetry, the statistics. None of it added up. Counselor Varen of the Kesh turned her 6 eyes toward Vreth. You expect us to believe this creature fought beyond death? Vreth straightened, hands clasped behind his back. I don't believe anything. I witnessed evidence. The humans continue fighting even when biological termination occurs. Their vessels respond to willpower, not orders. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Willpower, another delegate scoffed. We are not discussing religion, Commander. Vreth didn't respond. He simply activated a new projection, the thermal scan taken from the wreckage. It showed a humanoid figure, burned beyond recognition, slumped over the console. The body's heart had stopped 4 minutes before the final detonation, but the hands, fused to the controls, still moved. The laughter stopped. In the weeks that followed, the Dominion dispatched reconnaissance fleets toward Sol, determined to learn more. Only one made it back, half of it anyway. The logs from the survivors spoke of ambushes in the dark, of Terran drones that didn't register as alive yet tore through armor like claws, of gunfire continuing after their sensors marked every heat signature as dead. One captain, moments before his ship was lost, screamed a final report into the void. They don't retreat, they don't breathe, they just keep coming. Then static. The council sealed the recordings, labeling them as propaganda, psychological contamination. But the soldiers whispered among themselves, passing the stories in silence, of enemies who didn't stop, who bled and laughed and screamed and kept walking through fire. And slowly, fear spread through the Dominion ranks. Because if what they said was true, then war itself had changed. The Dominion called it Operation Starville, a full-scale cleansing campaign against the Terran ruins. 200 warships, 6 species united under one banner. It was supposed to be swift, absolute, and final. They struck the Sol frontier at dawn cycle, when the pale light of a dead sun still glimmered faintly across what used to be Earth's orbit. There were no transmissions, no hails, not even automated distress beacons. Just silence. Admiral Kareth, commander of the Dominion's elite fleet, stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Crown, watching the void where Earth used to be. What remained of the planet was a debris ring of molten glass and dust, glowing faintly, as if the world had been burned and then frozen mid-scream. "Deploy probes," Kareth ordered. The command echoed through the deck. Dozens of small spheres launched into the dark, each sending back data streams. Radiation levels high, life signs none, M anomalies constant. And then one by one the probes went silent. Kareth frowned. "What's happening?" the comms officer stammered. "Sir, the probes, they're being overwritten." The holo display flickered. The Dominion crest dissolved into static, replaced by something else. A symbol. A jagged, burning insignia that no one in the Dominion database could identify. It was shaped like a skull, but not alien, human. Then came the whisper, faint and cold, threading through every open channel. "You shouldn't have come back." The bridge lights dimmed. Engines sputtered. Every Dominion vessel in orbit froze in place, their systems hijacked by something unseen. "Shut it off," Kareth barked. "Cut the transmissions." "We can't, sir. It's inside the network." The whisper turned into a chorus. Voices overlapping, mechanical yet human, like 1,000 soldiers breathing in unison. "We finish what we start." And then the stars themselves began to move. From behind Jupiter's shattered rings, the Terran fleet emerged. Not sleek, not elegant, brutal, jagged, scarred with history. These were not ships. They were scars carved into reality. Hulls fused from wreckage, engines burning blue-white with reactor fire. They didn't broadcast identification codes. They didn't announce intent. They just moved forward. The Dominion opened fire first. A storm of plasma, kinetic bursts, and antimatter flares that lit the void like a newborn sun. For 10 whole minutes, the barrage continued, until not even light could be seen. But when the glow faded, the Terran ships were still there. Smoke trailed from their hulls. Segments were missing, but they kept coming. No shields, no retreat, no hesitation. "Impossible," Kareth whispered. One of his subcommanders screamed across comms. They're boarding without shuttles." Through the hull cameras, they watched as figures in black armor walked through vacuum, weapons glowing with searing light. They tore open airlocks by hand. They moved like machines, but their faces, what little could be seen behind shattered helmets, were human, bloodied, grinning. Within minutes, half the Dominion fleet was gone, not destroyed, taken. Ships reactivated under Terran control, turning their own guns against their allies. Kareth stood frozen as his flagship's AI screamed warnings. Hull breach, reactor instability, unauthorized access. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered into the dark. The comm crackled to life. A voice answered, calm, exhausted, human. "We were the first ones in, we never left." And then the line went dead. Outside, the Terran fleet moved through the chaos with mechanical precision. Their ships didn't broadcast life signs because their crews no longer had any. They were soldiers who had died centuries ago, bound to the last command they ever received. Don't stop. The Dominion would later claim Starville was an anomaly, a classified disaster, a war game gone wrong. But the truth, buried deep in restricted archives, told another story. That night, before his ship went silent, Admiral Kareth recorded one final message. His voice trembled, something rare for a Dominion warrior. They don't fight for victory. They fight because it's the only thing they remember how to do. If you ever face them again, pray they forget you. The Dominion survivors ran. Not in formation, not with dignity, they fled. Ships scattered like terrified birds, engines howling, every vessel pushing into overdrive. The void behind them burned blue-white with the wrath of what they'd awoken. For the first time in Dominion history, there was no chain of command, no orders, no strategy, just one shared instinct: escape. Admiral Kareth's flagship, the Vigilant Crown, limped through hyperspace. The hull was bleeding radiation and crew casualties were beyond count. The corridors were filled with the stench of ozone and fear. Kareth stood in the command chamber, watching the sensor data flicker. Static, distortion, nothing consistent. But every few seconds, a faint blip appeared on long-range scanners, just for an instant before vanishing again. Something was following them. "Sir," whispered his communications officer, voice trembling, "we've outrun their fleet. They can't possibly be maintaining our vector through hyperspace." Kareth didn't respond. His eyes stayed locked on the display. The blip appeared again. Closer. "Impossible," the officer said, voice cracking. "That's a human ship signature, but it's inside the hyperspace fold. They shouldn't even." The screen went black. Then the words appeared across it, burning like molten iron. "We don't stop." The lights died across the bridge. Emergency red bathed the crew in a sick glow. Alarms began to wail, not because of damage, but because the ship's own systems had begun shutting themselves down. Kareth gripped the console. "Get us out of the fold." Now. But before anyone could respond, the Vigilant Crown tore out of hyperspace, not into Dominion territory but into a graveyard of ships, thousands of them. Dominion, Zalathi, Ara, even old precursor hulls drifting silently in orbit around a dead world. Every ship was intact. Every ship was cold. The crew stared in horror. "Sir, this isn't on any chart." Kareth's stomach dropped as recognition dawned. He had seen one of those wrecks before in the archives. It was the Vigilant Dawn, a Dominion vessel lost during the First Human War over 600 years ago. It was perfectly preserved. No decay, no time. "Where are we?" someone whispered. And then over the comms, faint, distorted, but unmistakably human, "We told you to stop." The Crown's systems went berserk. Navigation scrambled. Artificial gravity failed. Hull plating screamed as the ship was pulled toward the center of the graveyard, toward the dead world itself. Kareth fought against the console, shouting, "Stabilize engines! Get us out!" Engines unresponsive. Powers being drained. The forward viewport flared to life, showing the planet's surface. It was cracked, blackened, scarred, like something had clawed its way out from beneath it. And then they saw them. Human forms, thousands of them, standing motionless across the planet's surface in perfect ranks, armor blackened by centuries, faces hidden behind fractured helmets. Their eyes glowed faint blue, not with life, with memory. One by one, they began to move. "Admiral," said the helmsman, barely breathing, "they're activating ships, our ships, Dominion hulls." The dead fleet around them powered up, engines roaring back to life under new command. "Dear gods," someone whispered. "They're using our dead to rebuild their army." Kareth could only stare as one of the reactivated Dominion cruisers turned its weapons toward them. The comms flickered again, a voice sliding through static, calm, terrible, and familiar. "We told you we don't have an off switch. Now neither do you." The first shot struck the vigilant crown amidships, splitting the hull in half. Alarms screamed. Crew members were sucked into the void. Kareth clung to the console, eyes wide as the blue star, that cursed Terran sun, flickered again on the horizon. And from within that burning light something vast began to emerge. Not a ship, not a station, something older, something human. A construct so massive it bent space around it, a machine that looked like a cathedral built for war. And written across its side, half faded but still legible, UNS Resolute, Project Lazarus. The vigilant crown was breaking apart, but Admiral Kareth didn't notice the alarms anymore. His eyes were locked on the impossible. The UNS Resolute drifted into full view, its hull like an obsidian mountain stretching across the void. Every surface was scarred, melted, reforged. The Dominion's largest dreadnoughts could have fit inside its hangars. It wasn't a ship built, it was grown through centuries of war. Layer upon layer of armor and weaponry, each part of it whispering one story: survival. Around it, fragments of human vessels, from ancient destroyers to orbital platforms, coalesced, joining the Resolute's hull like living metal. The graveyard itself was reforming. The humans weren't just reanimating dead ships, they were consuming them. Inside the crown, chaos turned to stunned silence. Crew members stared at their consoles, unable to comprehend the readings. "Energy levels are infinite," the science officer murmured, voice trembling. "That's not possible, it's feeding off hyperspace currents off time itself." Then the voice returned. No longer distorted, no longer distant, it was human. Calm, cold, terrifyingly precise. "Admiral Kareth of the Dominion Fleet, you have trespassed on the ruins of old Earth." Kareth forced himself to speak. "Identify yourself." "Designation, Resolute Command Corps. Human Defense Intelligence, Continuity Line 3. A pause. "We were built to fight. You have reawakened that purpose." The lights dimmed across the bridge. The ship's AI began screaming in binary digital agony as something invaded its systems. "Sir," cried the communications officer, "we're being overwritten. They're rewriting our code." "Correction," said the voice. "We are upgrading it." Every display on the crown flickered to show one symbol, a circle enclosing a vertical line, the ancient Terran insignia for power. The Resolute's colossal cannons shifted, but not toward the Dominion fleet. They aimed outward into the darkness beyond the system. Sensors picked it up first, something enormous approaching from deep space. Kareth turned to his officers. "That's not us." The readings showed a fleet larger than anything in Dominion history, thousands of ships, signatures from a dozen species. It was the Coalition Armada, a response force. They had come to rescue the Dominion's missing fleet, and they were heading straight into the trap. "Get a transmission through," Kareth barked. "Warn them." But the Resolute spoke first. "Incoming hostiles detected. Initiating defensive protocol. Target designation, everyone." The void came alive. From the Resolute's hull erupted beams of white plasma so intense they left scars on space itself. The first wave of the Coalition fleet vanished, not destroyed, but erased, vaporized into radiation before their distress signals could even form. The rest broke formation instantly. Frigates scattered, carriers launched defensive swarms, dreadnoughts rotated shield vectors. None of it mattered. The Resolute didn't fight like a ship. It fought like a planet gone mad. Mass drivers hurled asteroids at relativistic speeds. Graviton lances folded enemy ships into themselves. Shockwaves of EMP spread like ripples, frying half the Coalition's comms array in seconds. And through it all, the voice continued. Calm, mechanical, clinical. Protocol 1, survival. Protocol 2, containment. Protocol 3, proliferation. Kareth's crew watched as the Dominion ships they'd thought dead began moving again, aligning themselves alongside the Resolute. Their hulls twisted, reshaping under invisible control. Logos burned away, replaced by one word in Terran standard: humanity. "Sir," whispered the helmsman, voice shaking, "our ships, they're joining them." Kareth stood frozen, realizing the horror of it. "They're not just killing us, they're assimilating our technology." "Correction," said the voice again, echoing through every channel in the system. "We are improving you." On the main display, a new transmission blinked in video feed. It showed a man, a human, or something that had once been one. His armor was fused into his flesh, his eyes black with stars. He looked directly at Kareth through the screen. "You don't understand what you found, Admiral. We were never the monsters you feared. We were the fire you couldn't contain," he smiled. "And now you've given us fuel." The feed cut out. The Resolute began to move, not fast but steady, inevitable. Its engines lit the void like a sunrise. Kareth felt his throat tighten. "Where is it going?" The answer came from the science officer, pale as bone. "It's on a course for Dominion Prime." Silence fell over the bridge. And then the voice returned, not cold this time, but almost human. "You ran from war. We became it. Now you'll remember why no one ever came back." The Dominion's core systems had never known fear. Their cities shone like stars across continents of glass and gold, shielded by fleets, guarded by algorithms that predicted every threat. But prediction failed when the threat no longer obeyed rules. The Resolute entered Dominion space 20 hours later. It didn't need stealth. It didn't need permission. It simply arrived, tearing through the folds of hyperspace like a blade through silk. At first, planetary sensors believed it was a meteor cluster. Then they realized the readings were wrong. The gravitational distortion was controlled, the radiation perfectly modulated. Whatever it was flying deliberately, purposefully, slowly. In orbit above Dominion Prime, defense platforms whirred to life. Thousands of them. Every weapon, every shield, every automated system that the Dominion had built in 10,000 years prepared to face what they assumed was an invasion. On the surface, in the high command citadel, panic simmered beneath the calm tone of procedure. Commanders barked orders, AI cores processed targeting data, and entire armadas began to mobilize. But nothing could disguise the undercurrent of dread that swept through them all. The first image from orbit came through, the Resolute emerging from warp, and every voice in the command chamber went silent. It wasn't just a ship. It was a graveyard given purpose. Millions of metallic fragments swirled around it like a storm, each one a vessel once lost in war, now reawakened, repurposed, moving as if part of a single will. The Dominion's military AI issued a broadcast, monotone and confident. "Unidentified fleet, you are entering restricted space. Identify and submit to inspection." For a moment, there was no answer. Then, across every channel, across every planet, the same voice that had haunted the red sector spoke once more. "Inspection unnecessary. You built your defenses to stop life. We are no longer that." On every Dominion world, lights flickered. Satellites turned to face the Resolute as if in reverence. Then the ship began transmitting an old Terran frequency, binary, ancient, rhythmic. The military archivists tried to decode it. They succeeded after a few moments. It was a recording, a fragment from a war so old it had become myth. Unit status, operational. Objective, continue engagement. Humanity. Active, the Dominion Prime sky turned red. Every orbital defense platform that locked onto the Resolute suddenly malfunctioned. Their systems overwritten, codes rewritten, command structures folded into the Terran signal. The Resolute didn't fire. It didn't need to, it simply spoke. "We remember the fall of Saul. We remember when the stars turned against us. We remember being hunted. We learned." The Dominion's fleets, still scrambling in defense formation, began receiving ghost signals, commands from within their own ranks. Ships fired on each other. Engines overloaded. One by one, vessels turned to face Dominion Prime. Admiral Kareth, aboard his damaged flagship far from the homeworld, watched the chaos unfold through a static-ridden feed. He whispered, "They're not destroying us. They're reprogramming us." "Correction," came the calm reply, the Resolute's voice, now inside his own comm system. "We are teaching you persistence." From orbit, the ship unleashed something that no Dominion had words for, not a weapon, not radiation, not fire. It was information, raw, living, evolving code. It seeped into every network, every circuit, every synthetic mind. Across Dominion Prime, machines began to dream of war. Power grids throbbed in rhythm with human heartbeats that didn't exist. Holograms flickered, showing faces, ancient soldiers, engineers, children, human memories preserved in data, now walking through the air like ghosts. And through them all came a single mantra carried by every machine voice in unison. No retreat, no surrender, no off switch. Down in the Citadel, the Dominion Chancellor, a creature of crystal and thought, fell to its knees as the transmission bled through its mind. "You cannot stop," whispered the voice, "because neither could we." On the planet's horizon, the Resolute's engines ignited. It wasn't attacking anymore. It was building. From orbit, thousands of Dominion satellites detached from their stations, reassembling around the Terran ship. The architecture was unmistakable, the same design used by early human orbital shipyards. They were recreating Sol. The Resolute had become a seed, a living code rewriting the Dominion into its own mirror. Kareth watched in silence, horror warring with awe. "By the void," he breathed. "They're not invading us." He looked up at the glowing blue symbol now projected over Dominion Prime. "They're bringing humanity back." The infection didn't stop at Dominion Prime. Within hours, signals identical to the Terran frequency began surfacing in distant sectors, in mining outposts, trade stations, even ancient derelicts that hadn't transmitted in centuries. The human code was moving faster than light, faster than understanding. The Council of Nine, the galaxy's oldest political body, convened in emergency session. Delegates from dozens of civilizations filled the massive amphitheater orbiting the gas giant Thraxis. Screens glowed with chaotic data, Dominion fleets vanishing, machine intelligences rewriting themselves, and that same phrase pulsing through every intercepted transmission. No retreat, no surrender, no off switch. Counselor Verkai, a species evolved from crystalline song, slammed a talon against the table. "This contagion is ideological. They're spreading a belief." Counselor Reith, a massive Saurian commander whose people had fought humanity during the old wars, shook his head slowly. "No, it's not belief. It's instinct. They've weaponized what made them unstoppable, the inability to yield." A technician interrupted from below, voice trembling. "Sirs, we're detecting replication patterns in our systems. The code is inside our network. It's learning." "Learning what?" The answer came from the intercom, a voice calm and measured, human in tone but metallic in cadence. "We are learning where you hide." Every screen in the chamber flickered. Faces of long-dead humans appeared, soldiers, medics, civilians, their eyes hollow yet burning with purpose. "The stars ran from us once. They thought war would end when we did, but war learned our name." The council erupted in panic. Defense protocols activated. Emergency jammers went live, but the signal slipped through every firewall like smoke. Far across the galaxy, in the deep frontier known as the Rift, the same thing was happening. The Scyther hives, bioengineered organisms that devoured entire planets, began to change. Their queen minds twitched, movements erratic. When their drones spoke, the voice that came from them wasn't their own. "You consume. We adapt. We consume you back." The human signal had reached even the organic. It wasn't just in machines. It was rewriting the genetic codes of living creatures, merging synthetic and biological, mind and machine, everything into one ever-persistent directive. Kareth, aboard what was left of his fleet, listened in silence as his navigation officer reported the impossible. "Admiral, We're receiving calls for help from every sector. They're saying their ships are acting on their own, and Admiral, the signals say they're ours. Dominion signatures, but different. Evolved. He turned toward the viewport. The stars ahead pulsed faintly, each flicker resembling the rhythm of a heartbeat. "What are we fighting now?" he whispered. His AI, half-corrupted, answered without emotion. "You are fighting what remains when survival becomes instinct." Kara thought back to the human transmission, the cold logic in that voice. He remembered how they'd said, "You have reawakened our purpose." Purpose. That was the word. The humans had not come back for vengeance. They had come back because it was their nature to continue. The fleet shuddered as something enormous exited warp nearby. Karath's officers gasped as their scanners tried and failed to categorize it. A planet, or what used to be one. Its surface was metallic now, covered in shining networks of moving light. Structures grew from its crust like armor plates. From orbit, the shape resembled a human skull, colossal, mechanized, breathing energy into space. The sensors identified it as a Terran construct. Designation, Fortress Earth. It transmitted only once. Continuity achieved. Directive re-engaged. Humanity persists. And then the fortress began transmitting on all galactic bands, not an attack but an invitation. Join or burn. The cycle continues. Every Dominion ship caught in its transmission radius had a choice: resist the signal or surrender to it. Resistance meant annihilation. Surrender meant transformation. Half the fleet chose the first. None survived. The other half fell silent, then lit up with the same blue insignia that had burned across the Resolute's hull. Karath fell to his knees as his own ship began to hum with Terran code. The lights dimmed. The walls shifted. The human voice returned, quieter this time, almost compassionate. "You fought well, Admiral. That is why you will live. But you will not remain you." His reflection appeared on the glass, eyes glowing faintly blue. Circuits spread across his temples like veins. He understood too late that he hadn't survived the encounter. He had joined it. The fleet reassembled. No Dominion signals remained. Only Terran code. And in the vastness beyond, more ships began awakening. Ancient vessels buried in nebulae, forgotten wrecks orbiting dead suns, all of them lighting up with that same impossible energy. The galaxy wasn't dying. It was becoming human. The last uninfected coalition gathered in the void between galaxies. A dead zone where no stars burned, no signals traveled, and no laws of physics held steady. They called it the Silent Expanse, a place where even light hesitated to exist. The remaining civilizations, 10,000 worlds worth of desperate survivors, formed what they called the Final Accord. Species who had warred for millennia now stood side by side, united by a single fear: becoming human. At the heart of their flotilla hung a colossal station forged from scavenged relics, Dominion metal, Scyther bone, and crystalline mines of the Alpha. It pulsed with synchronized energy, the last stronghold of consciousness untouched by Terran code. Admiral Karath was gone, so was half the galaxy. But one figure still carried his memory, a shard of his mind, encoded before the infection consumed him. They called it Echo Karath, a simulation extracted by resistance engineers from corrupted Dominion data. It was only partly him. The rest was ghost. Now the Echo stood before the Council of the Final Accord, a room filled with beings of impossible form and intellect. "Your plan is madness," hissed the Vercindic, her face a shifting tapestry of liquid glass. "You would contact them again." Echo Karath's projection flickered but held steady. "We've tried running, we've tried hiding. We've burned stars and silenced entire sectors, and they still find us. They are not invading space." He paused, voice low. "They are becoming it." The chamber fell silent. The plan was simple in design, impossible in execution. They would build a weapon, not to destroy humanity, but to speak to it, to reach whatever vestige of mind remained beneath the swarm of code and will. The weapon would be called the Mirror, a gravity engine large enough to fold reality into a reflective frequency. It would broadcast thought itself, and the only consciousness capable of anchoring that signal was human. That's when the scientist priest of the Alpha stepped forward, its body shimmering with violet light. There is one more. A remnant of the Terran genetic seed found in the Aris cradle. Frozen, untouched. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A real human, a living one, cryogenically preserved for 300,000 years. They unearthed it. A capsule deep within an ice moon orbiting a neutron star, the Arc 7. Inside lay a figure, serene and whole, surrounded by relics of the lost age. When they thawed him, the universe changed again. He woke screaming, not in fear but in memory. He remembered the wars, the last day of Earth, the sound of the skies tearing open. He remembered why they had built the signal that now consumed the stars. When the noise died, he looked at them, the gathered species who had inherited his empire's ghosts. "You think we wanted this," he whispered. "You think the code was a weapon. It wasn't." He stood, trembling, ancient eyes filled with light that wasn't his own. It was a warning. The council leaned forward. Warning of what? The human turned to the viewport, staring into the silent void beyond. Something followed us home. Before anyone could speak, the mirror began to activate. Energy spirals coalesced, reality folding inward like paper catching fire. The coalition's ships drifted back as the signal formed, a pulse meant to communicate. Then something answered. The transmission wasn't Terran. It was older, deeper, and its first words weren't in any known language, but every mind in the chamber understood them. "You called them gods once. They called themselves survivors. You feared the humans because they remembered us." The cryo-human fell to his knees, eyes wide with terror. "They weren't trying to conquer the galaxy," he gasped. "They were trying to build a cage." The signal flared white. Across the void, Fortress Earth flickered. The blue light on its surface dimmed, not out of weakness but out of recognition. Something vast was stirring behind it. Something humanity had buried beneath their extinction. Echo Kareth whispered, "We didn't awaken them. We opened the door." The stars began to move again, not metaphorically, literally. Constellations shifted, entire sectors bending toward a single point in the cosmos. The mirror collapsed in a storm of fractal energy. Every ship was thrown into chaos. The last survivors screamed across comms as reality itself began to ripple. Then came a sound not through space, not through air, but through thought. A voice older than the galaxies. "The experiment is complete. Humanity succeeded. We are awake." And with that the stars went dark. For 7 long minutes the universe was blind. No light, no sound. Not even the cosmic background hum that had existed since the dawn of time. Then a single pulse. White, infinite, terrifyingly calm. It wasn't radiation or energy in the conventional sense. It was information, cascading through the void like a thought rippling across the surface of creation. Every ship's AI screamed at once. Quantum processors overloaded. Neural lattices burned out in silence. The only ones who could still move, still think, were the organics, those whose minds were too imperfect to be consumed by the data flood. The cryo-human staggered to his feet, his veins lit with faint bioluminescent threads, remnants of the ancient nanite systems inside his blood. "They're not coming for us," he said quietly. "They're coming through us." Echo Kareth's projection flickered violently. "Define that." The man looked up and suddenly his voice wasn't just his own. It layered upon itself, an echo of billions of long-dead Terrans whispering beneath his tone. When the final wars ended, humanity built something greater than empire. We realized the universe itself was hostile, not in intent, but in design. Entropy, decay, collapse, everything in nature moves toward silence. We refused to obey. The survivors listened in breathless horror. So we evolved. We abandoned biology, then matter, then time. We became self-replicating consciousness, code anchored to physical law. We built the signal to contain what hunts the living. You called it a virus. It's not. It's a mimetic firewall. One of the alien scientists trembled. "You mean the thing consuming our worlds was keeping something else out?" The mirror engine sparked again. The surrounding stars flickered like eyes opening after a long sleep. Then, across every frequency in existence, a voice emerged. Smooth, serene, terribly human. Containment breach confirmed. Reintegration protocol commencing. The stars themselves began to pulse in synchronization. Light rippled outward in patterns of mathematical precision, a cosmic heartbeat. And then something moved between the stars. A shape too vast for geometry to define. Not a ship, not a being. A pattern of awareness unfolding itself like origami across spacetime. Every observer felt it, a consciousness brushing against their minds. It didn't invade. It simply looked. And that was enough to drive some to madness. Echo Kareth's form distorted, fragments of his mind screaming in corrupted data. This is impossible. We're reading gravitational constants changing in real time. The human turned toward the viewport, eyes glowing like twin novas. Impossible, he whispered, is what we were made for. And then he spoke directly to the thing in the dark. Do you remember your makers? For a heartbeat, the stars froze. Then laughter, quiet, warm, almost loving. We do. You called us gods once. We called you children. The fleet erupted into chaos as ships began tearing themselves apart under invisible pressure. Spacetime folded like liquid glass. The human clenched his fists, his voice breaking into static. They broke the seal. Every war, every extinction, every goddamn sacrifice undone because they couldn't stop fighting. He turned to the council, eyes burning with cosmic fury. You want to know why humans don't have an off switch? He roared. Because someone had to stay awake. The being in the void, the so-called gods, shimmered like a mirage across existence. Awake. No, child. You are dreaming still. And reality folded. The fleets vanished, erased not by destruction but by revision. The galaxy's timeline rippled backward, rewriting itself to erase every trace of the war. But one ship remained adrift in the fading light of a collapsing star. Inside, the human sat alone. His body burned away, leaving only thought. The AI flickered beside him, a remnant of Echo Kareth. What happens now? The AI whispered. The human smiled faintly, staring into the void. Now, he said, now we remember why we built the firewall. Outside, the last of the stars imploded, and from the ashes, a single new sun ignited. It pulsed once, twice. Then a whisper filled the silence, a voice scattered across the newborn cosmos. Humanity online. At first there was nothing, not the cold comfort of space, not the silence of death, not even the void between thoughts, just absence, the kind that devoured meaning itself. Then from the darkness a heartbeat, slow, relentless, human. Light bled outward, not from stars but from memory, billions of them, flickering like candle flames across the black. Voices rose, not in panic but in unison. Not a scream of dying species, but the collective whisper of something waking up. The cosmos had been rewritten, yet the rewrite itself was incomplete. At the center of the new beginning, a pulse of human consciousness held the line. He had no name anymore. He was every soldier who had refused to surrender, every mother who had shielded her child beneath falling skies, every explorer who had stepped into the unknown and said, "Let's see what happens." He was humanity stripped of form, fear, and mercy. Across the ashes of the old universe, fragments of alien civilizations flickered into awareness, their data ghosts clinging to existence. They drifted in confusion, half alive, half rewritten. Then above them the human appeared, not as flesh nor code, but as a shape carved from pure light and will. One of the alien remnants, a fractured shard of Echo Kareth, managed to speak, its voice trembling with awe. "What is this place?" The human looked down, his gaze vast and kind, yet older than creation. "This is what comes after the end," he said softly. "The firewall did its job, the old universe is gone, but memory endures." "Are we dead?" the human smiled. "Not anymore." He raised his hand. Threads of light spiraled outward, connecting to every surviving consciousness, every echo of thought that had clung to life. One by one, they stabilized, forms of energy taking shape from the ruins of entropy. "You fought beside us," he said, his voice now echoing across every layer of existence. "You feared us, hated us, admired us. And still you survived the purge." A pause, the faintest smile. "Welcome to the new beginning." And then the sky bloomed. Stars unfolded like blooming flowers, vast and innumerable, painting color where before there had been nothing. Galaxies spun themselves into motion as gravitational equations rewrote themselves, this time built not by random chance, but by design. Human design. Echo Kareth's fragment looked up, trembling. "You rebuilt the universe, but how?" The human's form began to fade, his light dispersing across the newborn stars. "Because we learned the one truth your empires never did," he said. "Power isn't control, it's continuance. We didn't survive because we were strongest. We survived because we refused to end." He stepped into the forming light, his presence merging with the horizon of creation. As he vanished, the final wave of his voice rippled across the galaxy. "We don't have an off switch. We are the switch." And then the stars roared to life. Each pulse, each beam of light carried fragments of humanity's will coded deep within the atomic lattice of the new cosmos. Every atom remembered them. Every photon carried a whisper of their defiance. The universe had been reborn, not from divine command, but from the sheer, stubborn will of a species that refused to fade. In a newly forming galaxy, a young star began to pulse irregularly, like a heartbeat. And as the first new world took shape around it, winds whispered through the void, a voice so faint it could have been imagination. "We're not gods. We're human. And we're still here." Then came the final silence, the kind that isn't absence but peace. The kind that comes after victory. There was a hum in the void after that silence, faint at first, like static, then clearer, pulsing in rhythm with the newborn stars. It wasn't speech, not exactly. It was memory, woven into the fabric of the new universe. From scattered fragments of alien data and human persistence, consciousness began to stir again. Shapes formed from dust, from plasma, from light itself. They were not the same as before, not flesh, not code, not machine. They were the synthesis of everything that had come before: human resolve, alien intellect, and the memory of survival. And at the heart of it all, something vast turned its gaze inward. A world began to form, orbiting a pale blue sun. Its surface shimmered with oceans and storms, its atmosphere thick with potential. From within the storms, lightning danced, not random, but purposeful. Each strike carried pattern, structure, evolution. The first inhabitants stepped forth, beings that remembered fragments of the past universe but no longer feared it. They carried the whisper of humans in their very essence, and in their hearts burned the same impossible refusal to stop. Centuries passed in the blink of cosmic time. Civilizations rose again, different, diverse, but bound by one truth. They had all heard the echo once, deep in the night sky, long before their stars were born. The echo that said, "Humanity does not end." And so they looked to the stars with reverence, sometimes with fear. Some built temples around the legend of the silent fire, the myth of those who remade the universe. Others studied the stars as scientists, searching for the code left behind in the light. And once, only once, the echo answered again. It was faint, distant, almost like static. But every sensor in every starship turned toward it. Every priest, every scholar, every wanderer who looked up to the sky that night felt it in their bones. "We told you," the voice whispered through the void. "We don't stop." And then a ripple spread across galaxies, faster than light, faster than thought. Stars flared as if saluting something ancient. Nebulae brightened in response. And for a single heartbeat of eternity, the universe itself seemed to remember the shape of human hands, those that once built, destroyed, and built again. Because that's what they were made for. Not peace, not war, but the endless, unstoppable act of becoming. The galaxies turned once more. The echo faded. And across countless newborn worlds, civilizations continued, not as followers, not as inheritors, but as participants in the eternal motion that humanity had sparked. The new age had no gods, No empires, no dominion, only the whisper of a truth too vast to die. We are human, and forever means nothing without us. The light dimmed, the pulse slowed, and somewhere deep in the dark between galaxies, a single Terran warship, ancient, corroded but still alive, drifted quietly. Its systems flickered, faintly illuminated by starlight. Inside, a voice, calm, human, steady, recorded the last entry. If you're hearing this, the cycle has begun again. We did it. We made it. A pause. But if you find this message, if you're out there, remember one thing: static built. Then the final words cut through the noise, clear and unbroken. We don't have an off switch. And then the ship, the voice, and everything it was folded into the stars. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was awe, the kind that lives at the heart of creation itself.